Hey folks, it's that time of the week again, and it's our worm talk of the week. This week, what we're talking about is adding worms to your garden. So, most people think adding worms to their garden is unnecessary, but that's might be why you're working harder in the garden than you should be. The reason that doesn't really work is because people think that soil improves on its own just by adding this, that, and the other, and that's not necessarily true. We need to add biology to the soil if we really want it to be able to perform to the best of its ability. Healthy soil isn't just dirt sitting there, it's actually a living system. We talk about this in the living soil community, and we always talk about our four principles, which is air, water, food, and microbes, as you guys know. And this makes up a living soil. But how does adding worms to the system help everything, right? Because that's what we're talking about, adding worms to the garden. How does this actually help? Well, check this out. If you didn't know that worms function in a bunch of different ways in the soil, one of those things, one of their functions are to create space, to allow air to go into the soil. This is their burrows. This is them burrowing down into the soil, making ways, making tunnels through the soil. This allows air to penetrate through there. So if you've got soil that's really compacted or something like that, specific types of worms can actually go through that compacted layer and create burrows to allow oxygen to flow through there. Another thing that happens is not just air flows through these burrows. Yeah, I know. You already guessed it. I know. The water flows right behind them too, right? So you got air and water going in there, and that helps break up and create a different structure inside of the soil, right? All of this is going on, and they're living their lives while they're breaking down all the organic material, right? Which is air, water, and food that we're talking about. And they're depositing the microbes behind them in these burrows and tunnels. And those microbes are the things that feed our plants, right? And this is why worms are so important to that ecosystem. They're soil engineers for a reason. They've got that name, right? They, if they are not in the soil, right? If they're not there, then who has to do this? I'll wait. Yep. You as the gardener, you as the farmer. If there's no worms turning over the soil, right, and doing these things, then you're going to be the one that has to do it. I don't know about you guys. I would rather spend more time enjoying the things that I grow instead of working to get them to grow. So if you're in that same state of mind and you think that, you would prefer spending less time in the garden and more time enjoying the garden or the farm, then maybe adding worms isn't such a bad idea, right? Of course, we got to make sure that the conditions are right for those guys. But at the end of the day, they will take care of all that stuff for us, right? They will take care of getting air into the soil. They will take care of making sure that water can flow down into the roots where our plants need it, right? They will also take care of the tilling of the soil, making sure that they're incorporating the organic material from top to bottom, right? Different worms perform different functions. Some of those guys will go to the surface, pull that organic material down into the soil, and then deposit it there along with their poop, right? At And when they're depositing their poop, they're depositing the microbes, right? And as you guys know, microbes are the things that create food for our plants. If without those microbes, there would be no plant food for our plants, plant nutrients. That's what we're talking about here, right? So, one of the biggest myths I think that I've run across is misconception that worms are just for composting. They're just creatures that we stick into a bin and they just break down this organic material. And that's just not right. They actually belong in the garden, in the soil. That's where they are in nature. They're not in containers and bins and stuff like that. They're actually in the garden. And I know what you're thinking. Some of you guys are living in harsh conditions. You're thinking it's impossible. I live in Alaska. Worms can't survive here. They can. Some of them can, right? We've got Canadian night crawlers. Are called Canadian night crawlers because they live there. They like the cold. That is their purpose, right? Maybe if you live a little farther south in Canada or Alaska, maybe you can run into some red wigglers, right? Red wigglers, they like normal temperatures like you and I. And maybe if you get into a hot region, then you run into, your African night crawlers that like warmer temperatures. We've got worms everywhere, right? It doesn't matter where you live. There's probably some type of worm that is in that soil somewhere. Maybe it's not there right now. We have to put it there, right? Like when I first moved to this place, there were no worms. I had desert landscape, right? Like it was dry. There was nothing there. So I had to put them there. But once you get that system started, they're there and they want to be there. That's their home. The reality is that these guys are the best soil builders out there. And they don't need scientists and engineers and chemists to figure out what plants need in order for them to grow the way they need to. They do it naturally. Mother Nature gave them that instinct, right? This is why we find soil when we find worms in healthy soils. They want to be there. They're supposed to be there. And then they will help keep that system going the way it's supposed to. Because Mother Nature intended it for intended it to be that way, right? So doesn't matter where you live. There's some type of worm that will be beneficial to your garden. Absolutely beneficial. And if you find this type of information interesting or useful, do me a favor. Like, share, or join our community in the description for more tidbits of information. But right now, let's get back to it. Now, why does all of this matter? Why should we be putting worms into our soil? Well, they create tunnels. Those tunnels improve aeration, they improve water flowing through our soils, right? They are the tillers that Mother Nature put in place so we don't have to. Worm castings, when they're going through their burrows, they drop their castings, nice way to say poop, behind them, and that improves soil in a number of different ways. But in this case, what we're going to talk about is the aggregation. So if you have soils that aren't really that great, sandy soils, clay soils, right? Those microbes from the worm castings will actually help aggregate that soil. In addition to that, those worm castings will hold on to a lot more moisture. So if you're lacking the ability for your soils to hold moisture, worms and their poop that they leave behind will help you do that naturally, just by putting them into the soil. When this happens, your roots can grow farther and deeper to get access to more of the nutrients that they need to give you the things that you want, whether you're growing fruits and veggies or whether you're growing flowers, right? Or perennial, any other types of plants. The further the roots can go, the more nutrients that are available to the plant. When this happens, you get more nutrient cycling occurring in the soil, more microbial activity, and this is all because of the worms. Over time, your soil just gets better, gets loose, crumbly, and it's that structure we're all looking for. So this is why we should add worm castings into the soil. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all next week. Bye now.